So let's make a study of the mouth. So I want to start with my backing of about half an inch to an inch thick. And again, I'm working for a slightly larger than realistic. And so first I'm going to start with my upper lip. So I've made sort of this like coil that I've pinched at both ends so it's a little bit narrower. I'm going to score and slip this on because I am working with water-based clay. Notice I didn't actually use slip, and that's because this is a practice piece, but it's super important to score and slip for anything you're going to fire. So I'm working on the planes and the principal volumes. So you can see in this example here that there are three principal volumes for the upper lip, right? The center and then the two sides, and then there are two principal volumes for the lower lip. So just keep this in mind as you work. Of course, the size and proportion of these principal volumes differs person to person, and that's again how you would get individual characteristics. So I've created those principal volumes and kind of the planes with just my fingers to shape them, and now I'm creating the lower lip in the same way where I'm rolling out this coil and then I kind of give it this downturn at the base. I want to think about the relationship of size. Is my lower lip larger, smaller? Does it stick further out? Does it lay back in? Scoring that on. Now the trick here is not to really lose that definition between the upper and lower lip, because that's hard to recreate unless you have a really thin kind of curved tool. So you can notice I smoothed it down near the outside edges, but I really didn't do anything with the other parts. So now I'm thinking about what are called, well, now I'm actually going to start smoothing this a little bit. I was starting to think about the nodes, but we'll get back to that in a little bit. So notice I have this really thin kind of piece of plastic that I can go in and cut away and smooth. So you probably need something pretty thin. And this is just a piece of like plastic strapping. An old credit card or gift card also works. So I'm going to take some balls of clay here and work on what are called the nodes. These are kind of the volume at the edges of your cheeks, right where it meets your lips. And we forget about this a lot, I think, when we're sculpting. But this makes a huge difference in really making the lips look like lips. And it looks super funky at first, right? Like most things when we're sculpting and making, the middle of any project is going to be a little bit awkward looking perhaps. So as I was working, I realized, I needed to kind of adjust the lower lip first. So don't be afraid to, pause and to redo or go backwards a little bit. Because, that's just a matter of observation, right? Pay attention to what you're noticing and take the time here. All right, so now I'm happy with how my lips are looking, and I'm going to add these nodes. So it is really, they are building blocks, right? Like once I finish one area and add the next, it's much harder to go back to that earlier piece. So I want to think about the corners of the mouth here. I'm not really fully defining them yet. I'm just roughing them in to help me remember where my mouth basically ends. So starting to blend that clay in so that I can see the full definition of the mouth without kind of these like rough areas. Depending on, what works for you, you might end up using tools, you might end up using your fingers. But again, that pointed kind of end of something is going to really help in there. Think about the size relationship of the lips, like I mentioned, what sticks out further, the lower or upper lip, what is fuller, because again, that's going to give you the personalized definition of any, individual. So now that I'm happy with the size relationship and the planes, I'm just continuing to define and smooth and get kind of clean it up a bit. So you can see here I'm using a brush that's just barely wet, so it's not so wet that it's going to really saturate the clay. You can see that it is a little bit damp, but just be careful if you do use this technique that you're not going in there with a damp, like a dripping brush. So I get my brush wet and then I basically blot it almost dry. Are the corners of your lips turning down? Are they turning up? Are they neutral? Right, what is the expression? I'm going for a very neutral expression here just because then I don't have to worry so much about different angles and wrinkles and things like that. So for like a practice piece or a beginning piece, a neutral expression is a good way to go. And that is my study of the mouth. So from here I would clean it up a little bit, but otherwise I would consider this done.